For more, let's bring in Toney, founding managing partner of Plexo Capital. He's also a CNBC contributor. So, let's talk about the full stack, the soup to nuts aspect, and whether it is, rightfully so, that Alphabet is being anointed this kind of new up-and-coming king of the AI race.
Yeah, well, first, thanks for having me. And I think, yes, we're seeing the story right now is that the AI narrative is shifting towards Google. And it starts with the infrastructure layer. And my core thesis has always been about the vertical integration. I've written extensively about Apple and how they have been able to create an incredible moat around their business using that playbook. And Google has done the same thing, the ability to control the infrastructure, models, and applications. And Google's the only hyperscaler that really has integrated across all three. And on the infrastructure side, as your team pointed out, Google has spent a decade building out the TPUs, working with Broadcom. And, these aren't general purpose chips. They're optimized around Google's workloads, the search, YouTube, ads, and now Gemini. And so that loop is able to compound when you combine that unique proprietary data that Google has access to with the ability to train. And we're starting to see those results. So what's new and what's really shifting the market recently is the TPUs, right? And so the fact that they're seeing the ability to not only perform really well on the inference side, which is kind of running these applications, but now they're also competitive on the training side as well, which has normally been the place where the NVIDIA TPUs have dominated. And so now that we see that Meta is evaluating potentially moving to these, that's significant. Now, Dom, if you remember the last time we talked, the last time I was on the exchange and you were hosting, I spoke about the fact that we're going to enter in this hybrid era of seeing multiple chips, right? GPUs in this case, also TPUs. And so, Google has that footing. And there's one more thing that I want to point out, and it relates to what Julia just spoke about, which is the conundrum that Meta's in. And the fact is, Meta really cannot afford to be able to compete similar to Google in building out vertical infrastructure because they don't have the offering of products. So when you look at Google, it's all about capital efficiency. The best way to achieve vertical integration and still maintain these software margins that we're used to is through cash flow, not by issuing heavy leverage. And Google Alphabet is the most capital efficient of all of big tech right now. And we know that's not the case with Meta. So when you think about the entire suite, that's why there's so much excitement about Alphabet Google.
All right, there's a lot to unpack here. And unfortunately, we're not going to get to unpack all of it in the time allotted here for our segment. But there have been plenty of instances. You speak about this full stack approach, this idea of vertical integration. That also implies a somewhat, at least on a relative basis, closed system. You're beholden to a certain level of that stack if you're a business or enterprise customer. There have been plenty of times throughout business history where that kind of closed source has led to the downfall of certain types of companies out there. I can even think of Apple back in its early days because of that system. What exactly, then, is the right way for these companies to approach the hybrid model if you don't want to go down the road of being too closed in a system that limits your ability to service enterprise customers?
Yeah, and I think that really gets at the core of when we look at Google's ability to have these TPUs, the custom silicon that's optimized for their internal products as well as their external offerings. So again, the whole benefit of having this hybrid environment is there are going to be some customers that will need to use and have certain tasks that are going to be best done in a GPU, but the ability to also have the TPU in that same environment to be able to have the optimization that comes from some of the services they'll need from a Google. So I think that's what's going to be different in this instance.